Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku joined the League of Villains. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Tartarus Prison. Atrocity raced through the hallways of Tartarus, all the while eliminating anyone unfortunate enough to cross him. It would take some time to get used to his new powers, but for the moment he was just enjoying himself. At long last that thorn in his side was finally gone, and with his death, the League was all his now. There was still Tomura's group, but he would deal with them when the time came. Just then his phone started buzzing. "Who's this?" he demanded. "The guy who helped you break into this shithole," a deep voice answered. Deathbolt. Atrocity recognized. Deathbolt was one of his best henchmen. He was a good fighter, intelligent and possessed an electric type of quirk that did more than just shock individuals. With his quirk, he could interfere with electronic devices such as cameras, computers, and traffic lights. However, a greater aspect of his quirk was that he could convert his entire body into electricity and move between electrical devices, while gaining complete control of these set devices. Like now. It was how he had managed to sneak in undetected. While he was using his quirk, Atrocity quietly broke in from the underground system, though he did have to take out most of the guards first. "No, it's Camus Woods," Deathbolt responded sarcastically. "My identity aside, is the job done?" "Of course," Atrocity gloated. "It all went according to plan. And now all that's left to do is to make some new friends." Deathbolt flinched at that declaration. When Atrocity said friends, he actually meant to recruit more individuals to his force. And with the people locked away here, it would certainly be deadly. "I'll call you back when I'm done," Atrocity finished before hanging upon him. A few minutes later he stopped outside the cell he'd been looking for. While he did want to recruit the other villains in this shithole, this one held a particular interest. Viper recommended him. In fact, she had worked with him several times due to similarities in their quirks. Atrocity messaged Deathbolt to open the cell door and headed inside. Upon entering he saw a man wrapped up just like Afo. Sensing his arrival, the man looked up at him. Atrocity could see that he had long purple hair that went down past his waist and purple eyes that resembled poison. It was befitting given the nature of his quirk. Well. Atrocity, the man greeted in a high voice. "To what do I owe this visit?" "You know who I am," Atrocity replied. "Good, this saves me time. I'll cut to the chase. I have a business proposition for you." "Oh?" the man responded, both amused and intrigued. "Madam Viper's recommendation, I'm guessing. I know about her association with the League of Villains and about you and Afo from working with her. So, tell me, what is this proposal you're suggesting?" "Okay, first let me just say that Afo is dead. I stole all his quirks and killed him not too long ago in this very shithole. Now the entire League is in my hands. Secondly, what I'm proposing is that you join us, or more specifically me," Atrocity explained all in one go. "So how about it?" The man thought about it for a couple of seconds before answering. "Will I be allowed to fight and kill whomever I want?" he asked. "As long as they're not members of my group, sure. I mean, you can fight with them, just don't kill them," Atrocity replied. "No problem. In that case, I will join you. I'm sure it'll be much more fun and interesting than this place," the man said. "I will need some new gear though." "That can easily be arranged," Atrocity replied happily. That had gone much easier than he expected. With an ally like this man, his force would be a bit more powerful. Atrocity undid the bindings, and the man was free. He stood up to reveal he was only slightly shorter than Atrocity. He ripped open the top half of his prison uniform to reveal a more muscular build. Some purple gas came out from him when he did this. It didn't bother Atrocity though. He had built up a resistance to poison a long time ago, a benefit of his power. "Oh, now that's much better," the man said. "Now then, let's go. I'm guessing I'm not the only one you're releasing." "Right you are," Atrocity agreed. "By the way, Viper didn't tell me your real name." The man snorted. "I abandoned it a long time ago. Now I just used my villain name," he explained. "It's Toxic. Toxic Chainsaw." At the villain hospital, it had been 10 minutes since they had defeated the metallic enemy that was trying to kill them. Everyone had been silent. It wasn't surprising given they were trying to recover from what just happened. The detectives sat next to each other against a wall. Dabi stood leaning back against the wall across from them. The mother-son duo was sitting on a box next to each other, Inko holding Izuku close to her as though he might disappear. "You've got a good mother," Deku, Dabi thought. "She's just like mine." Despite his respect for Deku, Dabi couldn't help but feel a bit of envy at his current situation. Inko reminded him of his own mother. Flashback. "Now Tuya, I know can trust you with this," his mother said to an 8-year-old him. "Don't worry mama, I'll look after them, I promise," he replied enthusiastically. "You can count on me." The woman smiled warmly at him before pulling him into an embrace. "I'm glad to hear it." Flashback end. Truthfully, his mother was not dead, physically at least. The same couldn't be said mentally. Back then he had made a promise to her, one he failed to keep. He had regretted it every day since then. It was all that man's fault, but also slightly his since he wasn't strong enough at the time. When Dabi looked at Izuku and Inko, he couldn't help but remember those happier times. His thoughts were interrupted by the police arriving with Pro Hero's manual and gunhead. About fucking time, Dabi sighed. All of us nearly died, you know. The police exchanged awkward glances with each other. Gunhead recognized Dabi and was about to attack him when Amasa intervened. Don't attack him. If it wasn't for Dabi and Deku, we wouldn't be alive right now, he explained. Upon examining the area around them, or rather the people present, the police moved to help them. Gunhead moved to help and keep an eye on Dabi, while Manuel checked on Izuku and Inko. Where are you hurt? He asked. I'm not really hurt. That thing just held me by the throat for a couple of seconds, Inko told him. Izuku was hurt more than me. Manuel turned his attention to the boy next to her. From the looks of things, he had been roughed up quite a bit. There was a plaster on the left side of his forehead, most likely where he'd been cut. He knew who he was though. So, you're Deku, Manuel said. I am, Izuku confirmed. Inko tense. She didn't like where this was going. Much to her surprise, Manuel smiled at him. I need to thank you for before, what happened in Hosu I mean, he said. You really helped Iida when he needed it. You put him back on the right path. He had been wanting to say that for a while now. Tenya had told him all about Deku when they interned together. At first, he was surprised that a villain had done such a thing, but in the end, he was glad. When Tenya was at his lowest point, it was him and the vigilante crawler that helped him back up. He was quite grateful. Izuku looked at him surprised. He hadn't expected this. Inko was just as confused. It was nothing, Izuku replied. I just didn't think killing someone was a heroic thing to do. Izuku wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to stop someone from making a mistake they'd spend their entire life regretting. Still, I'm grateful, Manuel said. Anyway, aside from your head, where is it you're hurt? That's my body, Izuku replied. That thing threw me around quite a bit. Though it wasn't much, his body was a little sore. What exactly was trying to kill you? Manuel asked. I'm not exactly sure. It was some sort of metallic device. It seemed to be targeting me for some reason. We all fought it until we had to retreat. I brought in Dabi who melted it with its quirk. I froze it with a fire extinguisher, and Tsukauchi shot the core to finish it, Izuku explained. As to who sent it, well I don't know. Probably the individual that was trying to kill me yesterday. Manuel frowned at that. The culprit from yesterday's mini-pot incident during the rescue was still a mystery to most pro-heroes. Though it had been confirmed that Nezu was the one who stopped the pods and was currently discussing it with the police. Let's get you both checked up and healed then, Manuel declared. Izuku had other ideas though, or rather he had something he needed to do first. Before you do any of that, would it be possible for me to speak with my mother, alone? He asked politely. There are some things I'd like to talk with her about. Manuel raised an eyebrow. The police force glared at him suspiciously. Dabi, Ryo, and Amasa retained stoic expressions. Gunhead just tilted his head slightly. Everyone, clear out so they can talk, Ryo ordered much to everyone's surprise. Gunhead stay outside and guard just so he doesn't try anything. He had promised Inko he would let her speak with her son. And after everything that had happened, she deserved it. Gunhead nodded silently. Dabi gave Izuku and Inko one last look before being escorted out of the room. No doubt the police would want to question him. Ryo and Amasa were assisted out of the room by the remaining officers and Manuel. When the room was cleared, it was just Izuku and Inko. The boy turned to look at his mother who did the exact same. It's time for the truth, Izuku said. What is it you would like to know first? Inko thought about it for a second. It was the one question that had weighed on her mind over the past year. The night you disappeared, just what happened to you? She asked. I tried to kill myself, he said. The response couldn't have been more honest or blunt, but it was the truth. Inko's reaction was expected. She was completely shocked. Her eyes had widened in horror. She suspected, but she never actually believed. I jumped off the top of an abandoned building. That's when Kurogiri from the League intervened and saved me, Izuku explained. The League scouted me out because of my quirk analysis abilities. They offered me a place and I accepted, albeit with some conditions. Inko was still trying to get over the shock of her son trying to commit suicide. Curious as she was about him becoming a villain, she was even more curious about what drove him to that point. Why would you do that? Try and kill yourself, I mean, she said. I would like to know about you being a villain, but only after you've told me about what led up to that. It's a really long story, he sighed as he began to tell her the whole truth. UA students 30 minutes later, there had been news reports about the attack on the villain hospital circulating online and on TV for the past few minutes. Naturally, it caught the eyes of some students. Ichiko was surprised that the hospital had been broken into given that it was such a heavily guarded place. That wasn't the only thing on her mind though. She has seen the fight between All Might and the League of Villains boss. She has seen him fighting to stay alive. It was the boy she encountered at the shopping mall. His name hadn't been given by the news, but she knew it was him. She would never have thought that he was a villain, he had been so nice. There was something about him that was so familiar that she knew she had met him somewhere before, but she just couldn't remember. Most likely he had been transferred to the hospital to be treated and been attacked during that incident. Well, she may not have known him that well, but she hoped he was alright, since he didn't seem like a bad person. In time there may be more information released about him, that way she could figure out who he was. Katsuki had also witnessed the news and was annoyed by it. It seemed that Deku was in another state of trouble. Typical, it was just like him to get into situations like this. He was probably helpless during the entire ordeal, not that it was anything unusual. When Katsuki arrived home, he went straight up to his room. His parents expressed their concern and understood that he needed to be left alone. His mind was still on Deku. He couldn't actually believe he had been beaten by that quirkless loser. Unfortunately, he had to accept it. He was still in denial about Deku trying to kill himself, but he was even more annoyed that he couldn't get his revenge on him. I hope you got hurt during that fight, really, really bad, he muttered. Tenya had been sleeping for a few hours when his phone started buzzing. His friends were messaging about the assault on the villain hospital, and that woke him up immediately. He looked at the news to learn more and saw reports of the hospital being in serious damage, patients and doctors in serious conditions. There were even some deaths. Surprising as this all was, his primary concern was Deku, who was likely taken there. He remembered during that ferocious battle, someone had definitely been trying to kill Deku. Villain or not, he had been the one to get him back on the right track to becoming a hero. He owed him for that. When he saw him on TV, he was quite surprised since he didn't look that much older than him, and wondered what could have driven someone as young as him to becoming a villain. However, because he lacked any real information, Tenya went back to sleep. Mina was just as stunned as the others when she saw the news. She thought the villain hospital was impossible to break into. She was more concerned about Izuku, who had been transferred there. Worried about that boy? Her father asked. Mina nodded as a reply. When she arrived home, she told her parents about the entire ordeal. They were both horrified and outraged that she was kidnapped for such reasons. At the same time, they were shocked at the fact that another villain saved her from such horrific circumstances. While they were shocked, they were quite grateful to Izuku for protecting their daughter. Someone tried to kill him during All Might's battle. Maybe that person was trying to do the same thing again, she said. I just hope he's alright. Izuku had done a lot for her. She didn't want him to die. In fact, part of her was hoping he would get released. I'm sure he'll be fine, her mother said. Mina, why don't you go and take a nap? You've been through a strenuous ordeal. We'll call you when dinner's ready. Mina raised no arguments. She was tired and a couple of hours would do her some good. Dabi was currently being examined by doctors and the police. He had been fortunate enough not to receive any serious injuries. The detectives were given more attention considering how bad their wounds were. Doctors with different healing quirks came forward to help. Other doctors from different wards arrived to assist the patients who were in critical condition. So, what happens now? He asked Namasa, who was seated opposite him. You will be questioned about your activities with the League, Namasa replied honestly. Afterward, you and Izuku will be detained until we decide what to do with you. Dabi scoffed at that statement. Hate to break it to you, pal, but I hardly know anything about the League since I only joined a few weeks back. The first job I did for them was that whole kidnapping operation, Dabi explained. Speaking of which, that girl, Mina Ashido. Did she get away safely? Namasa raised an eyebrow. Why did he care about Mina? Yes, she escaped during the battle between your leader and All Might, he replied. Good. She's a nice girl, not like others I've encountered, Dabi said. Ryo was using his quirk on Dabi, so he knew he was telling the truth. Izuku told us that most of you didn't know Ashido was there, is that true? Namasa asked. Oh, it's true, alright. Muscular was the one who kidnapped her for his boss. Atrocity, I think his name is. He kept her hidden while we were all transported back and then hid her somewhere in the building. Deku found her later and managed to lie his way into keeping her from Muscular by saying it was on Sensei's orders, Dabi replied. What do you mean by that? Namasa asked, confused. Deku didn't really know the details of the operation until an hour or so before it started. And by that, I mean I only told him we were kidnapping a potential recruit. I didn't tell him it was Bakugo, Dabi stated. When he found Mina, Muscular showed up and he managed to lie his way into saving her by saying he was ordered by Sensei to handle the extra students that weren't targeted. No one else knew that he hadn't known prior, so it was perfect. The detectives were silent. They hadn't known Izuku did that sort of thing to help Mina. What was his reaction to Katsuki Bakugo? Ryo asked curiously. They had heard much from Izuku's interaction with Mina, but not about his interaction with Bakugo. Dabi's face darkened at this. He wasn't happy when he found out. Actually, no scratch that he was furious. Barring this one time a few weeks before, I don't think I'd ever seen him that angry, Dabi said. He was shouting and swearing, which was rare. He could still remember how upset Izuku had been when Bakugo was brought to the League. It made sense considering their past, but still, it was strange to see him behave that way. Namasa and Ryo weren't the least bit surprised at this information. From what Afo and Inko said about Izuku's relationship with Bakugo, it was completely natural for him to act that way. They taught Izuku how to fight. He asked. He never said who it was. No clue, Dabi sighed. I've never met her or heard her name. Deku said she was a friend of Stain's, and that she wouldn't always be with the League, whatever that meant. Ryo frowned while Namasa raised an eyebrow. So it was a woman who trained Izuku. Thinking back on when they interviewed Izuku, he always phrased his trainer as the person who trained me, he never stated the gender. Pretty clever of him. However, if that woman was no longer part of the League, there was no reason to be concerned about her. Wasn't there? Sirs, urgent news, the officer said while panting. There has been a mass breakout at Tartarus prison. Most of the guards are dead and all of the inmates have escaped. There was silence for a few seconds until the people present finally registered what had just been saying. What? Ryo shouted. That's impossible. That place is one of the most secure and impenetrable places in Japan. It can't have been broken into. The officer lowered his head and stared at the floor. It's true, I'm afraid. We just received a report about it. The other officers exchanged nervous whispers while Ryo stared at the officer in disbelief. Dabi was both stunned and impressed that such a feat had been accomplished. He had heard about Tartarus from other villains. He also knew that no one had ever escaped from it. Namasa was worried about something else though. If the inmates had escaped, then that meant Afo had escaped as well. Additionally, the villain that was just captured recently, Afo, was found dead in his cell a few minutes ago, the officer continued. Ryo widened his eyes in surprise. Namasa and Dabi froze at this information. Afo's dead, Namasa thought. I don't believe it. After everything that's happened, all we went through to capture him, he's just gone. This isn't good, Dabi thought. Shigaraki is gonna lose it when he hears about this. Deku, things are only gonna get worse for you from now on, much worse. Dabi knew very well that not every person in the League had a high opinion of Deku. However, no one took any action against him because of Afo. Now that he was gone, there was nothing to stop anyone from trying to kill Deku. Nezu was currently in his office filling out some paperwork. Since he was planning on converting the UA into a boarding school, it required a lot of time and effort. As he finished writing one stack of papers, Chiyo, recovery girl, entered the room. Good afternoon, Chiyo. What can I do for you? He asked politely. I came to drop off the forms you requested. They arrived just now, Chiyo replied quietly. That and I came to check on you. Nezu frowned. What was this about? I heard from the police. You saw him, didn't you? She said. You saw Atrocity. Nezu could have sworn he felt the fur on his body standing up. She knew, of course, she knew. Chiyo was the only one who knew what that man did to him. After all, it was her who rescued him from the doors of death when he escaped from that monster over 20 years ago. Flashback, he was running as fast as his legs could carry him. He had been running for a very long time, or at least that's what it seemed like to him. Pain coursed through his half-naked body, but he somehow managed to ignore it. His body contained a mixture of scars and bruises with stains of blood etched into his fur. Not all of the blood belonged to him, some belonged to a henchman he killed in self-defense. He didn't dwell on it much since he was just focused on getting the hell away from these monsters, from these humans. Atrocity was away for a couple of days, so it was his best and only chance to escape. Every day since he was captured and brought to that place, he'd had to endure various knives and needles being stabbed into him, injections of excruciatingly painful substances, and the cruel sensation of having his bones broken with a hammer. Why, just a week before, he counted the days to keep himself sane, his master had given him the scar across his right eye. He cut into his face in a way that kept his eye intact, just so Nezu would look at him properly when he tortured him. Atrocity would usually heal him up, using one of his subordinates, afterwards, so could do it all again. As if that wasn't enough, he suffered horrendous ridicule of the highest order from him. An animal with a quirk, you gotta be fucking kidding me, Atrocity sneered. You're not a human, yet you possess something that rightfully belongs to them. To make it worse, you go around acting like them, as though you're one of them. You're not and never will be human, so stop trying. I swear you're even lower than the quirkless filth that lives in this world, and that's saying something. Things like you and them have absolutely no right to exist in this or any other society. There were more insults that were equally as cruel as that. Due to his position, Atrocity dubbed Nezu as his mascot to let him know that he was his pet, his toy. Nezu was running by a park when fatigue kicked in, and he tripped and fell down the hill. He groaned as he tried to stand up but collapsed again. He was exhausted, there was no denying that. Goodness, what happened to you? A female voice called out. Nezu glanced at the source of the voice. It was a woman, with short blonde hair and diamond blue eyes. She was of moderate height and looked to be in her 40s, though he was just guessing. She was wearing a yellow t-shirt, white jeans and heels. She wore an expression of horror and concern. Nezu tensed up when he saw her. He was frightened. It was a human, a monster. It probably wanted to hurt him. Stay away from, you monster, he stuttered while shaking uncontrollably. The woman flinched at that statement. She eyed the creature before her with curiosity and concern. He was evidently afraid of her even though she had done nothing. What happened to you? She asked. Did someone do this to you? Nezu gazed back at her. This woman, why does she care about what had happened to him? Did she want to know so she could do the same? The woman moved towards him, her hands stretched out as if to pick him up. Please, let me help you, she pleaded. Her voice sounded so sincere. Nezu still believed she was trying to trick him. No, stay away from me. Nezu shouted. Human, monster. The woman didn't take no for an answer. She scooped Nezu up into her arms and started running to her apartment nearby. Nezu tried to fight back, but he had no more strength. Eventually, he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was lying in a bed in a small room with the window open and the sun shining in, while the curtain was blown back and forth by a light breeze. Nezu sat up to see he was wrapped in bandages, and some of his bruises had vanished completely. What's more, he didn't feel any pain. He felt a little bit drowsy, sure, but other than that he was completely fine. Well, maybe not entirely since he didn't know where he was. Nezu got out of bed and went to look at himself in the mirror. He examined both sides of himself to see that all bruises on his body had disappeared and that there were no bloodstains. The scar across his right eye was still visible, but there was nothing he could do about it. His thoughts were interrupted by a gasp from behind him. He turned to see a child, dressed in a blue t-shirt and shorts and white socks, with navy-colored hair and the same eyes as the woman from before. He wasn't that much bigger than Nezu. From the looks of him, he couldn't have been much older than 5. The child stared at Nezu with a stunned expression. "You're awake," the boy exclaimed in a high voice. The two stared at each other silently. Neither was sure of how to respond. It wasn't until the sound of someone entering the apartment did the silence break. It was the woman from before. "Grandma, he's awake," the boy called out. The woman arrived at the entrance of the bedroom. As soon as she saw Nezu, she smiled. "I'm glad to see that you're awake," she said before turning to the boy. "Thanks for looking after him while I was gone, Shin. Would you mind putting on the kettle for me? There are some things I'd like to talk about with our guest." The boy nodded and ran off. It was just the two of them then. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Nezu stared at her for a moment. She didn't seem like a bad person. Or rather, she didn't seem like the humans he had encountered so far. He was still wary of her. "I'm fine," Nezu responded honestly. "My wounds have been healed." "Were you the one who did that?" "Yes," she replied. "They were quite serious too. Broken bones, scars, bruises, loss of blood, and I found traces of several substances lingering within you. I had a friend of mine who specializes in treating those suffering from toxins deal with that. The rest I dealt with myself. I would have taken you to hospital, but since you would have died if hadn't acted sooner. Others came to examine you, but I asked them to allow you to remain here until you fully recovered. The way you were acting before made me think that you wouldn't have enjoyed being around so many humans." Nezu said nothing. She was quite right about that part. He would not have enjoyed it. "My name is Shioshizenji. I'm a pro hero that specializes in healing, and my hero name is Recovery Girl. The boy you just spoke to is my grandson Shin," she explained. "What's your name?" "It's Nezu," he stated softly. "What a cute name," Chio said while smiling. Nezu tensed at hearing that. It had been a long time since anyone complimented him. That aside, he was curious about something. "How long have I been here?" he asked. 5 days, she replied. "You've been unconscious the entire time." Nezu was stunned at this information. 5 days. He had been here for 5 days. That meant it had been 5 days since he had escaped from hell, 5 days since he escaped from Atrocity. What's more, this woman just kept him here the entire time. "Why did you help me?" he asked suspiciously. This question confused Chio. "You were injured. What was I supposed to do? Leave you there to die?" "It's my job as a hero to help those in need," she explained. "Even if they're animals," Nezu responded bitterly. "Yes," Chio retorted. "All those who are in need, human or animal." Nezu was surprised at her response. He hadn't expected humans to be caring for animals like him. "I'm guessing this is coming from whoever did all of that to you," Chio continued, while lying where Nezu's wounds originally were. Nezu looked away with a pained expression. Chio didn't stop there, unfortunately. "You're one of the rare cases of an animal developing a quirk. I found out shortly after I brought you here. Most quirks that give someone animal-like features don't completely alter their biology. They retain a little of their human DNA. Yours was completely animal, however," Chio explained. "I'll admit I was surprised when I found out, but I didn't care. You were someone who was suffering from life-threatening conditions. And as such, it was my duty to save you, and I wanted to." Nezu was speechless. This woman definitely wasn't like Atrocity. In fact, she was his complete opposite. She was different from other humans, at least, he thought she was. Chio stared at him some more before turning to leave. The kettle had finished boiling. "I'm going to make some tea. If you would like a cup, don't hesitate to ask," she said. "Oh, and if you need a place to stay, you're more than welcome to stay here for the time being." While Chio went to make the tea, Nezu stood there completely shocked. First, she heals him up, and now she was allowing him to stay with her for the time being. It was a highly bizarre situation he had gotten himself into. Nezu quickly weighed his options. He had no place else to live, and returning to his old home was out of the question. There was a high probability of being captured again, which he didn't want to risk. The people here didn't seem bad, but that didn't mean he could trust them. Then again, he was being allowed to stay here for free. Also, since he needed to lay low for a while, this was very convenient. Eventually, he reached a decision. He headed out to where the kitchen was and saw that Chio was making tea, while Shin was helping himself to a juice box. Making his presence known, he requested that cup of tea she offered, which she gladly made. They sat there in silence for a while until Nezu finally asked Chiyo about being a pro hero, to which she was more than happy to explain. That was to be the first of many sittings between them. In the following weeks, Nezu got to know Chiyo and Shin rather well. He built up enough trust to tell Chiyo about what had happened to him. Shin was far too young to know. When he told her, she was livid and angry at Atrocity for what he had done to him. Then she embraced him, saying it was alright, and he didn't have to face this alone. In time, Nezu managed to become a pro hero himself and eventually moved to become the principal of UA. The threat of Atrocity was still present, but Nezu took special measures to ensure that he could never come after him or anyone else he cared about. At his request, Chiyo became a nurse there, and the two had remained close friends. He was also quite close with her grandson Shin, but that was a story for another day. Flashback end. You're absolutely right, Nezu told her. I did see him, briefly. Nothing much happened though. Chiyo narrowed her eyes. How do you feel about it? She asked. A little shocked, but mostly angry, Nezu replied. He was planning to do to Mina Ashido what he did to me. Though he wore a calm expression, Chiyo could tell he was furious behind that. Do you think he'll try and come after you? She asked worriedly. Who knows? Whether he chooses to make war with this school is up to him. However, at the current moment it seems that we are not his main target, Nezu explained. I see, Chiyo replied, understanding what he meant. She turned to leave. If you do want to talk about it, let me know, she said before stopping at the exit. One more thing. I might be on board with you for what you have those documents for, but that doesn't mean the others will. Believe me, I know. That's why I am holding a meeting this afternoon to discuss it with everyone, Nezu said. After today though, it may actually be possible for me to get a permission for it to work. Chiyo didn't reply to that. She simply nodded and exited. Nezu returned to filling out forms. His thoughts turned towards the meeting in a few hours. All the staff, including All Might, would be there. Some might agree with him, others would be against it. But his decision had been made and he would go through with it. Atrocity had finally managed to bust all those villains out of Tartarus, and they were all quickly heading through the sewers to a more secure location. There were one or two who slipped away during the chaos, but he wasn't too bothered because he now had his hands on a number of powerful individuals. Toxic Chainsaw was looking forward to working with Viper again. They created so many wonderful poisons to kill others together. He was also hoping to get some new gear from her, since his old ones had probably been disposed of. When Atrocity had offered the other villains a way out of that shithole in exchange for their services, they all immediately accepted. They were all eager to get back to doing what they did before. He had received a call from Kuin saying that she had done what he asked, but didn't know if that quirkless shit was dead or not. He seriously doubted that Deku could have survived that. He may have been lucky before, but everyone's luck runs out eventually. If by some great miracle he did survive, he would find whatever prison they're keeping him locked away at, break in and personally slay him there. He tried not to think about Deku though. Right now, he just wanted to focus on his current plans. On the other hand, he was looking forward to seeing his mascot again. They used to have such fun together, and they could have it again. Razor and Stain. Razor had called Stain to meet up. The two met in an abandoned building to discuss the day's previous events. Razor, Stain greeted. Stain, she returned. How's your crusade going? Same as ever. I fought Endeavor recently, but he managed to survive and burn me, Stain replied bitterly. I spent a short amount of time recovering before returning to work. I swear I'll kill him next time I see him. Razor laughed before turning serious again. As interesting as that all is, we've got more important matters to discuss, Razor declared. Yesterday, for instance, quite the show, wouldn't you say? Indeed, it was a ferocious battle between All Might and Afo. It could have gone either way if that cheap shot hadn't occurred, Stain replied. Their battle aside, there was the attempt on Izuku's life. Anything to say about that? Razor stared at the wall. My guess, Atrocity was trying to kill him, she stated. He was never happy about Izuku joining the league because he was quirkless. Stain flinched at the name. He had heard of this man before, and he knew exactly what type of person he was, as well as what he did to people. There's no proof, but it's speculated that he was behind the Nomu that tried to kill Izuku and Hosu, Razor said. There was silence. If Atrocity had already tried to kill Izuku once, it made sense he would try again. Still, we trained him up rather well, don't you think? She continued. Stain nodded in agreement. Izuku had done well to avoid dying during that battle. At the rate he was going, he could probably take on pros. Where is Izuku now? Stain asked his friend. If I had to guess, the villain hospital. Since he was injured, it makes sense that he would be transferred there. Speaking of which, it was only attacked recently, Razor replied. Pretty convenient, don't you think? Stain knew where she was going with this and groaned. Whether Izuku meant for it to happen or not, he was always being targeted by someone. Razor was just as perturbed about the situation. She was curious as to why Atrocity would go this far to kill Izuku. He never pursued anyone to this level before. Even if he was quirkless, it didn't make any sense. Maybe Izuku did something that pissed Atrocity off more than he already was. So, what happens now? Stain asked. Well, my affiliation with the League is terminated now that Afo's in the slammer. I think I'll stick around for a bit, things may get interesting, Razor said. You? I think I'll do the same, Stain declared. At the villain hospital. And that's the whole story, Izuku said, having finally finished explaining to his mother everything that happened. Inko didn't know how to respond to all of that. She was horrified at the bullying he endured from not just Katsuki, but also his peers as well. She was even more furious at Katsuki for what he said to Izuku. The next time she saw him, she would make sure to let him know how he felt about it. I know I should have gone to you, and I didn't. It was stupid of me, Izuku admitted. You're damn well right. You should have told me before it got so out of hand. I may have been able to help you, Inko muttered angrily. There were tears streaming down her face. But it's also my fault for not acting sooner than I should have. Back then I should have tried to get you to talk to me rather than sitting back and doing nothing. So, I'm to blame also. Inko had done well to keep quiet the entire time, but now she just couldn't hold it in anymore. Part of her wanted to just scream at the whole thing. And Katsuki, when I see him, I'm going to give him a well-deserved smack across the face, she exclaimed. You don't need to do that. I already beat him at the USJ. I'm still going to do it. I'll be informing Mitsuki about this as well. Don't be mad at her now. This isn't her fault. I don't think even she thought Katsuki would say something like that. Hell, he doesn't even believe I did it. Despite his relationship with Bakugo, Izuku still liked his parents and didn't want them to get into trouble. Furthermore, Mitsuki, who had her son's temper, was going to be furious when she found out. Mom, I know you're not happy about it, but leaving was the best thing I could do to keep you safe, he reasoned. Also, they helped me to live again when most would have preferred it if I didn't exist. Inko didn't reply to that. While she understood why he left and what those villains did for him, she was still angry and upset. Gun had entered and interrupted them. Sorry to interrupt you both, but would you please come out for a minute? The police and Dabi would like to inform you about something important, he said. Izuku frowned. Why would they have Dabi with them? Didn't they want to question him? Curious as to what this was about, Izuku stood up to go and talk to the people outside, his mother following close behind him. Outside were Namasa, Dabi, and a few police guards. What is it you wish to tell us about? Izuku asked, wasting no time. Namasa and Dabi stared at him sullenly. Izuku was getting the sense that something terrible had happened. Taking a deep breath, Namasa spoke. There was a break-in at Tartarus prison, where Aifo was being kept. Someone set most of the inmates free, he explained. Izuku tensed slightly at this. That meant Sensei may have escaped. Most did escape, Namasa continued. The one exception was Aifo, who was found dead in his cell. Izuku's blood froze. For a few seconds, he was unable to breathe. When he recovered from his shock, he grabbed Namasa by the throat and pinned him against the wall. The detective anticipated this kind of response, which is why he asked no one to interfere. What the fuck? What kind of sick joke is this? If you're doing this just so I'll give you more information, let me tell you now I don't have any more, Izuku yelled. Sensei isn't dead. He can't be. Inko was stunned to see her son act this way. She had never seen him this angry before. Whoever this man was, he must have been important to him. Deku, Dabi addressed the boy in front of him. It's the truth. I was in the room when the report was given. Izuku gazed at Dabi. Disbelief and anger stretched across his face. No matter how much you wish for it to be different, that is the truth. That won't change. I'm sorry, Dabi said with a sorrowful expression. It took a few seconds for it to sink in. Izuku finally released Namasa and stood there for a few seconds. Inko was about to comfort her son when he turned and headed back into the room, slamming the door behind him. The police didn't even try and stop him because they knew there was no way to escape from that room. Inko was about to follow when Dabi stopped her. Don't, he said sullenly. Just give him some time. They all heard the sound of things smashing in the other room. Izuku was breaking whatever he could find. He was angry, confused, and sad at the same time. He needed to vent his frustration out on something. Aifo is the leader of the league, isn't he? Inko asked, concerned. Were he and Izuku close? Dabi thought about this. Considering he was furious when Deku was harmed, I'd say close enough, Dabi informed her. This allowed Inko to understand her son's behavior better. And with his death, things are only going to get more dangerous from here on out, Dabi stated. That caught everyone's interest. What do you mean? Namasa asked. Not everyone liked Deku for being quirkless. I heard a rumor that one member tried to kill him once, Dabi said. Aifo usually kept them away. But now that he's gone, there's nothing to stop anyone from trying to kill Deku. There was something else, something only he knew, but now wasn't the time to discuss it. The last thing he needed was Izuku breaking down even further. Meanwhile, inside the room, Izuku had stopped destroying things and sat curled up in a ball. Unable to keep it all in, he started crying. Someone important to him was gone and he'd never see them again. Sensei had been a father figure for Izuku, one he'd never had before. He supported him, encouraged him and protected him. And now he was gone, just like that. Memories of the man flooded his mind, causing him to sob harder. All who listened outside felt sympathy for the poor boy. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. and also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.